Good evening to all of you. Let me have the pleasure of introducing today's guest of honor and today's facilitator, Mr. Nitin Mahadik. And we should be talking to all of you on a very interesting and very, I think, insightful topic on what is called as why emotional intelligence is a crucial ingredient for inspired leadership. He comes with 22 years of illustrious experience, especially in this area. He has delivered hundreds of programs on mindfulness-based emotional intelligence programs, and also he's a certified actor from a beautiful studio. And the most important thing is that he has this uncanny ability of engaging audience, and he has been rated the most, I would say, the highest rated trainer across various platforms. When I say various platforms, I mean various learner profiles. So over to you, Nitin, and have a wonderful day with our audience today.
So let's start, and I want to now start with a couple of stories because I think I'm a storyteller at my heart and I love to share stories. But on a funny note, what I have realized about emotional intelligence during the lockdown is to be able to sweep your floor and mop the floor daily without getting irritated also requires emotional intelligence. And I've developed a new skill and I'm quite enjoying it now. I'm going to start with two stories about emotional intelligence. And the first story is I was talking to one HR head, and she called me one day feeling very anxious. And she says, we want to conduct a workshop for our leaders on how to give feedback. And my next question was, are they first-time managers? No, 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 they are very tenured in the organization, but we still want to run this workshop. So I said, what's their tenure of experience? Around 15 to 20 years. I was really surprised, so therefore I started asking more questions. And I said, I'm wondering, after 15 years of experience, don't they know how to give feedback or haven't they been trained? Oh no, we had a workshop 2 months ago on coaching for 2 days and they went through rigorous role plays and they were all groomed on it. So I said, what's the problem now? And she said, in spite of all this, one complaint was escalated to the highest level of leadership because this leader, while taking performance review, started abusing the employee and he could not manage his emotions. And then I discovered that the problem was not about giving feedback. It was about being emotionally intelligent, where you exercise self-control when you see that somebody has not met your expectations. And there's another instance that I want to narrate is my own story. Now picture in front of yourself a full audience, a full auditorium. We have worked for this play for the last 4 months, and here's an opportunity for us now to go on the stage and galvanize our audience. The first show, I and my co-actress opened the first scene where people have paid a lot of money to come to the show, invested 5 hours of their life in a city like Bombay to come and watch us. And my co-actress has to say 5 lines, then I have to say 2 more lines, and then the scene ends, which is a very prominent scene for the play to be established. And while we're going through the scene, she leans forward and whispers in my ears, I have forgotten everything. Now I have 4 things to do. One is not let the audience know that I am shocked. Remember my lines. Remember her lines. To say it from the character that I am playing, not as Nitin, and make it all appear seamless so that the audience does not say, oh my God, I wasted my money here. And that also requires emotional intelligence. So my point is that emotional intelligence is just not in formal leadership that we display in organizations. It's everywhere. It's in our families, it's in the society, and it's in leadership. So I want to start with asking all of you a small question, and you can type your responses in the chat box. And the question is this: what are the top skills that leaders and employees at all levels need in the organization? Please type your responses. Let's take a couple of minutes and then we'll go further. Okay, so someone says management skills, team handling power, decision making, guidance and patience, communication, interpersonal skills, listening ability, empathy, how to build connection with employees, team building, emotional intelligence, coaching and mentoring, direction to display empathy, psychological understanding of people. Wonderful. Okay, so there are lots of responses. Thank you very much. Now, this can be summarized into the next slide, which I'm going to show is a research from Harvard Business Review when they went to 330,000 people and they asked one question. What are the top skills that employees and leaders require at every level? Here's what they had to say. Now, just go through these top 5 to 6 skills. You will see all the answers that you gave are here. And these are not just for leaders. They are saying all these skills are required at every level of the organization. So if we have to summarize all these skills into one domain, again, I'm inviting responses. What would that domain be if we have to summarize all these top skills? Absolutely. Utsav Kumar says emotional intelligence. And now, while we know that these are important skills, the concern is how consciously do we pay our attention and efforts towards honing these skills. Yesterday, when I was doing a webinar, somebody said, no, we learned that on the job. And I said, how? Who monitors us? Who gives us feedback? We can monitor technical skills because there are parameters of performance and you can see either elevation or decline in the performance, but who monitors emotional intelligence or emotional quotient, which means while we are on the job, we may not learn them very consciously. Would you agree? Now, while these are required in the organization, let's see what is our current condition. And the current condition is, again, a research. 47% of the time, our mind is wandering. Can you believe that? Now, somebody can say, oh, no, I am very focused. Yes, you are. But there are other things that influence our attention span. And what are those other things? Technology. Yesterday night, I was looking at a research. Our eyes are receiving 2 million bits of information every second. And plus, we are expected to multitask. You know, that takes huge amount of brain power away from us. We check our phones 150 times a day. Even if there is nothing on the phone, even if all the notifications are turned off, after every 5 minutes, we will pick up the phone and check what is there on it. Which means, can you see how much pressure we are exerting on our mental faculties? There's again a research which says if I'm focused on one point and I have got this intense focus and I distract myself with anything, it takes 2x more power for the brain to come back with the same focus. And therefore, while we are not physical laborers, we sit in air-conditioned offices, but we go back home feeling this, exhausted. And plus, the concern for us is that all the time we are trying to douse fires, which means managing 10 tasks at the same time. Another problem that leaders report is 70% of the time leaders say they are unable to be attentive in meetings, especially, and I say this as a joke in every single training that I conduct, and participants respond this way, especially if you're on audio conferencing, which means you have a lot of time to do whatever you want while you are listening to the other person. And if someone says, so Nitin, what do you think? And Nitin just goes, I agree to what Mahesh said. And Nitin is not really completely listening. I am sure each one of you at least once have had this experience. And the greatest concern again is only 2% of the time people regularly take time to enhance personal productivity. Only 2% of people do that because mostly our strategies are external, which means if I'm losing focus, people say, oh, I need coffee. One of my friend actually was saying, I now realized in the lockdown, I'm not drinking as much coffee at home. But when I'm at office, I have 6 to 7 cups every day. So these are not really internal healthy strategies to be able to enhance our productivity, but they are just quick fixes. A lot of people say, when I smoke, I have this thinking time to come back. So which means I have to smoke frequently. So while this is happening, there are other things also happening, and this is what it is: personal productivity and well-being, mind constantly distracted, burnout due to multitasking, and plus, apart from all this, now that we have a little time to think, or at any point in our life, we also feel, is this what I want to do all my life? Sometimes people come to me after the training and they say, I used to do adventure sports. I'm not doing that anymore. I want to do some farming. I'm not doing that anymore. I want to contribute in some way to the society. I'm not able to do that, which means they're trying to find some deeper meaning and purpose in life. Lots and lots of times I've also heard these responses when we talk about customer service and delighting the customers. People have actually said this: managing our internal people is a greater challenge than managing others, the external customers, which means strained relationships at the workplace can be a big stressor. Now we constantly have to work in teams and need to collaborate, which means we will work with people who have different set of beliefs, different set of habits, different parameters of performance. And yet we have to together deliver heightened performance. And therefore, when relationships are strained at the workplace, people say managing office politics is the greatest challenge than anything else. And I also keep on saying that, look, we have sophisticated technology. We have everything that is very easy in the external world to facilitate communication. And yet sometimes we are stuck because of these people dynamics. Would you agree? If yes, raise your hand. There's a tab on your chat box. Somebody says 101% agrees. Shubhendu says yes, agree. And a lot of people would be able to resonate this, what I'm saying, because I've also gone through this as multiple times. A lot of people saying absolutely agree, yes, so I resonate with you through concerns. And therefore, now the question is, a lot of people saying yes, agree, yes, agree. Okay, I'm glad that you agree, which means we can now empathize with each other. We know that this is a problem and we need to address it in meaningful ways. When meaningful ways, I mean not just taking people to an offsite and 3 days of gala cocktail dinner, but the real issue remains the same and we come back. So I'm not talking about that, but addressing it in really ways that helps us to go to work energized and come back home saying, oh my God, what a day I've had. I would love to go back to work again tomorrow. Abhinav also says some are found very tricky, changes every second. Yes. So now my question to all of you friends is that if this is our current scenario, what is the way out? What should we do? So again, let me invite a few responses on the chat box. Is this going to be fixed by just offsite cocktail dinner events or just having a potluck or sending birthday cards? Practice. Renuka says prioritize. Daily yoga is what Vivek says. Change should start from oneself. Absolutely, I completely agree. Prioritize the work, cross-departmental functioning, understanding each other's woes, meditate to increase patience. And there are lots of responses. So I cannot read all of them because there are 629 participants. It will take 2 hours. But largely you're saying, we need to look at these challenges in very meaningful ways. And I'm reading the last response from Abhinav, need our mindset change. And also I feel, friends, we need to develop something called as emotional intelligence. And here's a definition of emotional intelligence. What Peter Salovey and John Mayer say, these are the founders of emotional intelligence. And pay attention to what they're saying, the ability to monitor feelings of self and the other. the ability to differentiate between that and use that to guide one's thinking and action. We're going to, look at this definition and also look at Daniel Goleman's emotional intelligence framework and how this is an essential skill for all of us in organizations. Okay. Say a yes or a no if I'm going at the right pace and you are with me. If you're with me, just type yes so that I know I'm at the right pace. Okay, great. So a lot of people are saying yes. So, okay, I'm not doing a bad job. All right, let me go further. Right. So now on this, Daniel Goleman expanded this framework of emotional intelligence. And if you see, there are 4 pillars of emotional intelligence. First is self-awareness, self-management, self-motivation, relationship management, and social skills. And every competency has a subset. I cannot address all of these in this webinar, but I'm going to look at emotional awareness from self-awareness, self-control and adaptability from self-management, and a little bit of resilience and the part of empathy in relationship management. Okay. This is the definition by Daniel Goleman about self-awareness, and it says that knowing one's internal states, preferences, resources, and intuitions, and paying close attention to that. In fact, it also extends further the clarity of how you operate out of your own values and principles, and also the moment-to-moment awareness. I'm going to share another story now. So last night, I messaged to my team because I had this really strong motivational thought about adding value through our work. And I had this thought that let's offer something to the clients in these times of distress. So I sent this message, long message, and I said, team, please respond in the next 4 hours. Okay, so one person responded. Nobody responded after that. An entire night passed. I woke up this morning. Nobody has responded. I just see 2 responses. And some thoughts start running in my mind. Oh my God, I told them that they should respond in 4 hours, but I have no response. And Sandhya probably never looks at technology. She doesn't like WhatsApp and all that. So internal state has shifted now. And I'm aligned to my own preference that they should have responded quickly. And I said, okay, let me just breathe. Let me not shoot a message on the group because maybe something is wrong. And I called Sandhya and I said, hey, what's up? How are you today? And you know what was the next response? I was going to call you today because I broke down badly last night. And I'm like, thank God I did not shoot a message on the group. Thank God I was not judgmental. Not that I do this every time. I'm a human being. I fail, but this time I took a pause. I was able to do that. And therefore, at the end of the conversation, my team member says, I felt so much supported today. Thank you for the conversation. And therefore, there are some things about self-awareness. It is not just somebody says this happens and we find it difficult to control. Exactly. And that is also what is self-awareness, friends. Because, for example, I had a certain preference that my team should respond in a certain way. And if that preference, which means my need, is not met, my brain, literally the amygdala, can fire a threat command. And the external action could be shooting a message on the group with a very rude tonality saying, I thought you're going to respond in 4 hours and the night has passed, wake up, and everybody's going to receive it in a very bad way. So let's look at further, what is this self-awareness? And so Abhinav says like bosses. Yes, so right now I'm a boss for a few people, so I'm being very, very concerned about, and trying to be more self-aware and see how that changes some of the aspects of my leadership. And self-awareness is about awareness of emotional states. And I'm going to ask you a question, friends. What are emotions? Type your responses in the chat box again. What are emotions? Stress, anger, feeling. Okay, these are what is the construct of emotion? Somebody says feelings. How do you know you are feeling? So how do you know you are getting emotional? State of mind, somebody said state of mind, and then mentality, empathy, body language, flow, state of mind, facial expression. A lot of people are saying internal state and state of mind, but let me just now throw more behavior, thinking of from the other shoes. Okay, so I'm not going to read all of them, but largely people are saying state of mind. And here's what is emotions. Pay attention to point number 2, which says emotions are nothing but physical sensations in response to internal or external stimulus. For example, okay, now I am sitting on this webinar and I see 667 participants, and my brain can go, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to deal with all of these. 616, I mean, I have never done this. This is my first webinar ever so for so many people. And this is an internal trigger. My body can start experiencing fear. How? I know that when I have fear, I have churning in my stomach. I start breathing very fast. And I know for Nitin, this is fear. So this is the internal trigger. And the external trigger can be, I am watching the news and they're saying the corona pandemic is going to go worse and the world is going to slide into recession. I can still feel fear in my body. So absolutely, like Apurva says, emotions are a response to a stimulus that is coming from outside or a stimulus that is coming from inside. But it is always a physical manifestation. Therefore, we say, look at the description of emotions, right? We say, I was full of pride and my heart expanded. I was trembling in fear. He or she was red in anger. These are all physical descriptors of emotion. And then the mind decodes the state. So, for example, if I'm feeling very angry in my body and I recognize the emotion, and my mind can define this state according to what I have learned as a conditioned response. But our greater concern is, why are emotions important in decision making? And sometimes we give advice to people, think logically, be rational in your decision making. That's not entirely true, friends. And I'm going to share this experience of Iowa gambling test. Okay, so what they did was they called people into the room. There were two sets of cards in front of them, blue deck and a red deck. So they have to pull out cards and win maximum in each round. What they were not told was the red cards are losing cards. And what scientists wanted to observe was, do emotions play a role in external action? So what they did was they connected lie detectors to their palms to measure the galvanized skin response. Because when we are under stress, the sweat glands beneath our palms, they start opening up and the body starts responding. Okay. So now here's something interesting that happened. When they pulled out, when they had 80 draws, pulled out 80 times, they figured out that there's something wrong, which means the red cards are losing cards. But after 50 draws, they had a hunch. So after they had a hunch, when they were pulling, they used to go, oh, what should I pull? Red or blue, red, blue, red, blue. But again, pull the same. So after 50 draws, they had hunch. After 80 draws, they figured it out. But here is where it gets very interesting. After 10 draws, the galvanized skin response had already shown a stress response activated. But they could not figure out from their mind that there is something wrong, which means the body and the emotions had detected something is wrong very early till the conscious mind could figure it out. And then I was referring to brain science, some research that I was reading, and it exactly says the same thing. There is so much of information that is coming to us. A lot of it is computed very fast. And if we are not in touch with our emotions, we may lose the wisdom that it carries in decision making. So I'm going to pause here and we will watch a small video by Daniel Goleman himself, where he shows the connection between thinking and feeling in decision making. So let's play the video. Abhi, let's pause the video. I think there's a bandwidth issue. Okay, friends, I'm going to just recap what the video. I'm just going to recap what the video was about. He's saying that there is a connection between the amygdala and the emotional center of the brain to our prefrontal cortex, which is the higher thinking ability and function of the brain. And there is a relay of information that happens, which means the amygdala and the emotional centers of the brain detect external cues and send information to the prefrontal cortex for analysis. And sometimes this connection is so fast and the relay of information is so fast that we have a gut feeling, which means the basal ganglia does not have the connection to the verbal cortex. It has the connection in the gut. And therefore, in our layman's language, we say, I can't explain to you rationally, but I feel something in my gut that we should not do this. And I can't really explain. And I'm going to give you another story about how this works. And this happened to me personally. So I stay in Pune, and a lot of my team members stayed in Delhi a few years ago. And we were supposed to do an offsite in Mussoorie, which means when we have to go for an offsite, we have to be really sure that we pack all the material with us, because we are running this show for 450 people. We forget one item from the entire inventory, the entire program is going to go for a toss. So, and we were supposed to report into Mussoorie on a Monday morning, which means Friday evening after the office is closed, Saturday, Sunday, nobody will go to work to pack the material. So it has to be kept ready on Friday evening. Sunday morning, I'm sitting in Pune and I'm walking to a grocery store, and suddenly I start feeling fear about the workshop. And I'm like, wow, this is strange. I don't know why I'm feeling this. And then a thought comes into my mind, maybe I should check on the material. And I call my colleague Triyansha and I said, Triyansha, so how many packs have you prepared? And when I asked her, I realized that she had given wrong instructions to the packing team, and it wasn't enough. We had to run pillar to post on a Sunday morning. I mean, not I, but people in Delhi had to do all that, get to the office, pack it, keep it ready, deliver it again. Had I not paid attention to that intuition, or the sixth sense, as we call it in layman's language, I would have just said, come on, yeah, don't pay attention. Everything is all right. People in Delhi are taking care. And we would have created a massive disaster, because 450 people, and that material was very specific. It is not available in any stores. It is available only in our office. So therefore, emotions play a very, very, very crucial role in decision making. And if you look at your own life decisions, after you were convinced with the data, the final nailing down happened only after emotional conviction happened. Say yes or no if you agree with me, or do not agree with me. Type it on the chat box. Do you resonate? So, okay, so lots of people are saying yes, 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 absolutely, yes, yes, yes. And so therefore, now what is self-awareness? To be able to track ourselves for these moment-to-moment changes of emotions occurring in our body, because again, neuroscience reports that our body is subtly communicating its weather to the brain, and basis that we decide our actions. So let's go to the next slide. So the question is now, how do we develop self-awareness? There are two ways we can develop this: by developing moment-to-moment body-based awareness. I'll give you an example. The other day we were doing this common prayer, and I asked everybody to go into gratitude, and I asked one question to everyone, and I said, now let's observe how gratitude feels in our body. And you'll be surprised how people responded. Oh, I felt an expanding of my chest. Somebody said, I had a tingling sensation in my spine. Somebody said, I felt my shoulders relaxed. Somebody said, I had sweaty palms. Somebody said, I had a little bit of tension, but this lovely tingling feeling all over my body, which means these emotions arise differently for different people. And therefore, we must develop this moment-to-moment body-based awareness. And one participant said, I felt numb all over my body. I could not feel it. And then we were doing a coaching session one-on-one. I asked him a question. Have you never paid subtle attention to your body when you feel emotional? He said, yes, I always suppress them. And that's a big deterrent in decision making. In fact, lots of people, business people, CEOs were asked, how do you make decisions? They said, we look at the data. After having looked at the data, then we go by what our gut says. We listen to the sixth sense. Okay, so let's go further. Now coming to self-management, what is required for us is to manage these disruptive emotions, which means the example of that leader who started abusing because he could not handle a non-performer and it got escalated to the highest level. Now, friends, another thing that I want to point out here is that, when we do change management seminars, a lot of times we are asked to come and same happens when you change your job is what Bijay is saying. Yes, exactly. When it comes to adaptability, we are called to do change management initiatives. And all the organizations that I've gone to, people say and report that people are resistant to change. While we know in our head, change is the only constant, and we keep on talking about it, change is the only constant thing, change is the only constant. But when it comes to responding to that change, something goes wrong. Again, a short story. 6 months ago, we started recruiting for our mindfulness facilitators pool. And because I was sitting in Pune, I was recruiting people from all over India, and I used to write a long email to them explaining why I need your video, because I cannot come down to your town, but I need to see your style to see a sync with our requirement. Yet, in spite of doing this, people used to write saying with all these responses, oh, I'm not used to videos. Oh, I've never done it. I'm actually better on the floor. Actually, that's not my style. And again, I have to explain. What they were essentially saying is, I don't want to adapt because I feel anxiety, I feel fear, I feel uncertainty. And now, sadly, all of them have been forced to do webinars because you can't go out. Thankfully, there's this bright light behind me. I wanted to start shooting YouTube videos long ago, like last year. And if you still go to my YouTube channel, the first video says, I'm going to create a horrible video. And it's still there on the channel. So that is what is self-management. When we are responding to change, we have to quickly get over our anxiety, insecurity, uncertainty, and quickly respond to change, because in this VUCA world, we need resilience as the topmost ability to respond. And friends, we are going to face a lot of difficult time. This VUCA world is at the highest. Somebody is saying, what is VUCA? So Rahul, VUCA is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Do you resonate with this term now? That our life is volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, and it's ambiguous. What requires is high level of resilience. And if we can't deal with that, then we, in layman's language, again, we say, our people are so attached to their desk, they wouldn't even change that. Forget about change management. And then if organizations and individuals are not able to adapt, then the change process takes a very long time. There is friction, there is drop in performance, there is politics that happens, distress and stress, and then burnout. Last A means ambiguous, which means no clarity. And friends, not just in organizations, imagine in the last 10 years, I have moved 6 houses, which means so much of VUCA happening in personal life also. Sometimes life will throw much more challenges in front of us, loss of a loved one, some illness in the family. I went through a surgery. I was dysfunctional for 2 months. Now with this corona crisis, loss of income, loss of opportunity, everything life will throw at us, which means we can't choose that. We have to manage ourselves, be more resilient, and respond. Preeti says, can you repeat what was V for? V is for volatile, which means continuously changing. It's not static. Some change or the other continuously is happening. Okay. So now I'm going to touch the last part in relationship management. I'm at 4:40. This is going to take me 5 minutes, and then I'm going to invite for questions. Relationship management. Everybody, what is U for? Uncertain. Uncertain. I'm going to repeat VUCA again. I'm going to type in the chat box actually. So if you look at it, I've typed it in the chat box what it means. Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Now the last part, yesterday, if many of you attended the first webinar, we talked about empathy also, but I'm going to talk about what hinders empathy in organizations. And here's what happens. Again, a lot of times we are called to do this vision building exercise. Okay, all the team members gather together, book a lovely resort offsite. At the end of every evening, there's a cocktail dinner, and the intent of the meet is to decide our way further into the future. And the moment the facilitator will say, okay, so friends, let's have some views. Everybody goes, I think, I feel, this is my opinion, and I'll tell you what happens. And everybody responds by using a yes, but. So if somebody, and I'm going to give you a beautiful example. I was leading such kind of a group, and we were talking about how to create well-being at work. So one participant gets up very enthusiastically and he says, let's go cycling to work. Immediately 4 people pounce on him. Yes, but I stay so far away. I can't come to work like that. Yes, but it is not possible. And other person throwing another yes, but on him. Poor guy sat into a corner sulking, saying that I'm not going to contribute. Because nobody was ready to display cognitive empathy, which means understanding the perspective of the other person. And then finally, I had to stand in the middle of the group and say, friends, can we stop slaughtering our own people like this? What he means probably is that while he just gave an example of cycling to work, probably he means let's focus on physical well-being. And I looked at him and I said, Ramesh, did you intend to say that? He said, exactly. Nobody was understanding my point. And I said, friends, if you're going to do yes butting all the time in this workshop, I don't think even if God comes down to run this workshop for you, you will ever achieve your vision. And what you're doing is you're hampering psychological safety of participants. And what is psychological safety? I'll give you an example. And this is from Google. If you're interested, go on the internet and type Project Aristotle. You will get this entire story, what Google did. What Google wanted to observe was, what is the winning formula in high-performing teams? Okay, so they started studying different teams because they thought there could be certain patterns in teams. And after 2-3 months, they were really surprised because they were not finding any patterns. One team which had a culture of absolute openness and people can share and obstruct anyone in the meeting and speak in between, delivered high performance. And the other team, which was very methodical, organized, disciplined, also delivered high performance. And then they started looking for more observations. And what they found out was the team which outperforms the others or high performing teams have something called as psychological safety. What does that mean? It means as a team member, do I feel secure to be vulnerable in the team? Do I feel heard and accepted? And can I share openly? If teams have this psychological safety, 2 things happen. One is a sense of belongingness, which is called as inclusion, and the other is affiliation. We cannot affiliate with someone before we feel inclusive, and constant yes butting kills psychological safety, which means we are not displaying empathy in organizations. Now, the problem is you can't read an emotional intelligence book and reach empathy. You have to consciously train the skill. The good part is these skills can be trained, and therefore they are called as skills. They are not called as God gifted empathetic person. No, everybody can train themselves on these skills. But if we are not doing that, then I think our team members are going to feel unsafe, they're going to feel unheard, and the team's performance will be depleted. The other day when we were doing a webinar on empathy, there's a clear data now. People who display empathy towards each other, or organizations who are very empathetic, outperform other organizations in many, many ways. And the best reward is people feel enthused to come to work every single day. So I'm going to stop here now, friends, and let's have few questions coming in, and I'll do my best to answer what are the most relevant questions. Of course, nothing stops you to reach out to us even after the webinar. Yeah. So Sujoy says, what is cognitive empathy and emotional empathy? Okay. So Sujoy, cognitive empathy is the ability to understand the other person's perspective. So I'll give you an example again. For example, let's say the other day, my team member was saying, I don't know what is going to happen. My income is reduced by 50%. All my other contracts are canceled, and I'm really feeling stressed. Now I can have two responses. Look at the first response. Hey, don't worry, yaar. Think positive. Nothing will happen. We will go through it together. Now I'm not able to take his perspective. But if I say, I see that it's tough, and you think you have a concern about how you're going to manage the future, that is about taking perspective. It is not agreeing, but just seeing it from the other person's perspective. And then emotional empathy is the ability to feel what the other person is feeling, to be able to be in the other person's shoes. And the best part is, if we are able to recognize emotions in self, then we are able to recognize emotions in others also, because in our brain, the same areas of the brain which process pain for self also process pain for others. And therefore, Daniel Goleman says, self-awareness is the foundational skill of emotional intelligence. Okay, so let me just now, a lot of people have posted a lot of questions. So let me see what I can pick now. Okay. Can somebody from our team members do some sifting for me and then pick up the most relevant? I'm swamped by questions on the chat box.
Then one question would be, what is the basic difference between sympathy and empathy?
Sympathy is I feel for you. Empathy is I feel with you. So if anybody understands Hindi, sympathy is daya, and we don't like to be sympathized, which means, oh my God, you're so much in distress. That's not bad. It's not a bad feeling. But when people feel empathy for each other, they feel more understood and connected. Thank you, Vinod. Anything else that you spotted? Because there's just...
How do we measure emotional intelligence? How do we know where do we stand?
Okay, good. So I'll give you one again story. How do we measure? So we did, during the last week, we did a few sessions for mindfulness-based emotional intelligence, and we were talking about pausing when you listen. Okay, and then one participant the next day reports saying that, actually, Nitin, I used what you said yesterday. I allowed the client to complete everything. While I had this instinct to reply, I was just pausing. And at the end of the conversation, the client said, thank you very much for listening. And she's like, I have had this experience after a very long time. So the first parameter to know if you are becoming better at listening, taking a pause and responding, is your own self-feedback, because the body will give you feedback. Your habitual responses will give you feedback. The second is there are various ways to measure emotional intelligence. For example, you can take an online test, which is called as Mesquite, M-S-C-E-I-T, M-S-C-E-I-T, Mesquite, or DANVA, D-A-N-V-A, DANVA. Mesquite and DANVA are the tests which can give you some data about you, about your current level of awareness about your emotional world, your habitual responses. So that's another way that you can measure it. Third, a very sophisticated way you can measure it is put electrodes on your brain, put you into an fMRI machine and study the activity in your brain.
Are emotional intelligence and emotional quotient one and the same?
It is same. It is synonymous, synchronous. We just use alternative terms.
Is empathy measurable?
Empathy, if you see, for example, empathy, is it measurable in units? No. Is it measurable in people's responses and behaviors? Yes, it is. And one way that Danwa and Muscat have one section in their instrument where they show you emotional expressions of people, and you have to recognize exactly what is that emotion. And that tells us that if somebody is able to even recognize it in pictures, that person has high ability to be empathetic. And these are, mind you, universal emotions. In fact, they picked up some tribal people who have never come to civilized societies, and they showed them emotional faces of civilized people. They could exactly know what emotional face was that person displaying. So these are universal, all over the globe, they are same.
There's a question. Being the youngest in the team, how do I be assertive with seniors, and how do I disagree with something that I'm not convinced about?
Okay, so I'll have to take like 15 minutes for this, or run you an entire section for 2 hours of how to be assertive. But here's what you can do quickly. When you feel pressurized, you can articulate what are you feeling in that moment, and you can also articulate your need. For example, let's say in a team meeting, you were not allowed to speak. Then you can say, actually, when I'm not allowed to say what I want to say, I feel anxious or I feel suppressed. And what I would prefer is that my need to express in the meetings is honored. But that takes a lot of courage, and therefore, first, you will have to start communicating in a way which is not threatening to people. So I would say also start communicating what you're feeling in your own closed personal circle. Do not directly go take it to office if you're not comfortable how to express in a healthy way.
A few of the participants have requested you to repeat the test that you mentioned, the names and the...
Yeah, I'm going to type it in the chat box. Is that okay?
Perfect.
Muscat and Danwa. Somebody saying how to communicate it with Arnab Goswami. Take a sword and a shield, or maybe some atom bombs if you want. Go and blast him out.
How emotional intelligence is impacted by ego, and how can it be controlled?
Oh, wonderful. Ego is nothing but a set of self-identification, identifying myself in a certain way, and our needs being met or unmet. For example, yesterday, my need of instant response wasn't met, and Nitin's identity was hurt. And therefore, I exaggerated my identity and saying, as a leader, people should respond to me quickly. This is not acceptable. And I went through all that trauma. So ego is identity of the self and a combination of met and unmet needs. So last 5 minutes.
Yeah, the five senses give us data and we intuitively process it, but we do not know exactly.
Yep.
But that gives us a gut feeling. Is it the gut feeling that we call as the sixth sense?
Absolutely, it is. Also, do not immediately start relying on your gut feeling. There's a big research which says that with acute observation for a very long time, the brain develops the habit of rapid cognition. You will cognate so quickly that you'll get a feeling in the gut, and most of the times it will be all right. I'll give you an example. I was in Ahmedabad. I was taking an auto ride. And because it was a long ride, I started talking to this auto wala, and I said, so you must be meeting different people from all walks of society, right? And he said, yes, sir. If I see somebody walking from a distance of 20 feet, no, I will tell if this person is going to pay or not. I'm like, oh my God, such insights are required by CEOs. How did you develop it? And he said, no, sir, in the first 4 years, a lot of people have cheated me. But now I've been driving this auto for 15 years. I have observed the world so much, sir. Now I don't have to think. Scientifically, he's saying, I have remained in the state of observation for a very long time. Now my brain can do rapid cognition to quickly arrive at a decision making, whether should I allow the passenger to board my auto or should I leave him out. So intuition is trained by sharp observation. So my suggestion to you, friends, is Do not ask condensed version of everything. Short में बताओ ना, short में email भेजो ना, छोटा video भेजो ना. Don't do that. Sometimes we require to pay long-term sustained attention to develop the sharp intuitive ability.
Can spiritual intelligence be connected with emotional intelligence?
Now, various people define it in various ways. What does spirituality mean to you is very important. For somebody, it is realization of the soul. I don't understand that at all. For me, spirituality is functioning from my highest awareness. Then that can be equated with emotional quotient because they are synonymous, right? If I'm functioning from a filtered high level of awareness, then I will do those acts which are in the best benefit for self and others. I will be harmless. That can be called as spirituality. Last one question, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's a good summary question. In tough times like these, how do we handle emotions as tough times and tough decisions are on the way, which are not in our control?
Absolutely. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to use a phrase from Buddhism which says that don't just be concerned about what you feed your body, also be concerned about what you feed your senses. Because what we consume through our senses also plays in our mind and brain. And one of my friends yesterday was saying, मैं तो सुबह उठ के ना I check the COVID number thrice a day. मैंने कहा healthcare worker है क्या कर रहा है? Why do you want to check it thrice? How are you going to change the world? You're just feeding yourself data which is not required and you're feeling more anxious. So in these times, friends, one, please make sure you don't consume disruptive news unless you have a very high threshold for tolerance. Do not take your thoughts and emotions so seriously when they come as a tidal wave for a moment. And therefore, the energy of mindfulness says, thoughts and emotions will come like strong currents. They will stay there for a while and pass away. If you do not get latched onto it, the next thing that will happen to you is you will stand away from all these debilitating thoughts and emotions and be able to harness well-being. In these current times, make sure you relax your body and also you give your body some mobilization by doing some form of exercise at home. Make sure you don't pack up your day with continuous external activity. Spend some time doing some mindful breathing, looking inward, settling your body, and staying harmonious. For small disruptions, let's say you don't get tea in the morning at 7 o'clock, don't start blasting your family members. Everybody needs peace, support right now. So do not worry if small needs are not met. Let's just be grateful to God that He's still protecting us. We are well fed, at least from many out there who are suffering. And that all this together will create an internal environment of equanimity, which will allow you to help yourself and others in distress. I think it's 5 o'clock. So what do you want to do?
A couple of more questions if you can. One.
Okay, let's take one more. Yeah.
So having too much of an empathy in your team, can it have an undesirable effect of, maybe missing the team target or the planned target?
Yes, sir. So too much of empathy sometimes is called as empathic congestion. And I'll give you an example again. My sister is a very enthusiastic counselor. Okay. So one day she went to counsel someone. That girl cried so much for 2 hours. My sister was crying for next 2 days. She got sucked into that person's emotions. And therefore, if you go back and look at the definition of emotional intelligence, it is the discernment of what is my emotion and the other person's emotions. And using that information to thinking and taking actions, which means while being empathic, we can absolutely take strong decisions and even fire someone for non-performance. It does not mean being all altruistic and not looking at what is pragmatic. Should we close then?
Yes, Nitin.
Okay, good. I'm going to end this by doing this gesture, which I love it. Thank you very much for joining, and I hope you're taking something back. I wish all of you safe times and times of higher resilience, and may God be with you, and may it help you to bring well-being, peace, and success in the future. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nitin, for your wonderful session. And we will be sharing the recording of this link as well as the presentation with all of you once the series gets over. Thanks, everyone, for joining in. Thank you.
Thank you.